Alrighty, so we are now recording. So welcome again to our introduction to PBIS for families. Thank you to the families that are joining us today and those that are watching the recording. Some National Center resources that I used to prepare for this presentation. Also, resources for you guys to utilize as well include CEFL, which is the Center for Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning, and NCPMI, which is the National Center for Pyramid Model Interventions. They both have a ton of resources, visual supports, social stories. So anything that you might be looking for as it relates to visual supports for PBIS, you can find it in one of those two places. Also, a reminder, after we are done going through the material today, I will stay on for a live Q&A. If you're watching this on the recording, please feel free to reach out to your classroom teacher, to Angela, the behavior specialist, or even myself, if you have any questions or would like a resource that we discussed today. So here's a little agenda of what we are going to do. We're going to talk about what is PBIS. We're going to do a little overview of PBIS in preschool. We're going to talk about building relationships and the 5-to-1 ratio. We're going to talk about the power of play, encouraging positive behavior, and last but not least, establishing routines. Okay, so here we go. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. PBIS is, in a nutshell, a positive approach to behavioral interventions. Okay, it's proactive instead of reactive, and it focuses on teaching or replacing any sort of negative, challenging behavior with more positive and appropriate behaviors. So, the goal of PBIS in preschool is to promote children's success. And how do we do this? We do it by creating an environment where every child feels good about coming to school. We want to design an environment that promotes child engagement. We talk a lot about engagement. And what does that mean, right? Engagement might mean different things to different people. When I refer to engagement, what I picture is the child being interested in something, right? And then having an interaction, right? Whether it's communication or play, right? They're interested and they're engaging with either a peer or an adult, right? And then we also focus on teaching kids what to do. Okay, so we're going to look at teaching routines and expectations. And like I said before, teaching skills that kids can use in place of challenging behavior. So what exactly does this look like in preschool and in Easter Seals? So we do have program-wide expectations, okay? These are general guidelines for how we want to, they're general values, right, that we have in the building. And actually here, to be safe, be kind, have fun. I apologize, this slide is from a webinar that I did last year. But I'm going to share with you later our behavior matrix. That includes our expectations and all of the common language that we use with our kids at school. Some examples here include walking feet or quiet voice, hands to self. You've probably heard some of these things before. So we really focus on that whole body listening and trying to avoid calling out the negative behavior. So instead of focusing on what the kid is doing incorrectly, like an example would be like, don't run or stop running. Instead of saying that, we want to focus on telling children what exactly to do. Like, oh, remember, we used our walking feet in the hallway, right? Giving a positive expectation, a positive guidance of what we want them to actually do, right? Also, PBIS focuses on social and emotional skills and development, professional development, staff support. So we also do staff training in addition to our family support and training. Family engagement, including training and group supports. And we also have core leadership and coaching teams, which I do want to talk to you a little bit more. So you might see some familiar faces on here, some not familiar faces. So this is from Core Leadership Team 2020. Okay, which has changed a lot since then. But This is an example of something our PBIS core leadership team did for our staff during COVID, okay? Our core leadership teams are comprised of teachers, admin, therapists, teaching assistants, and we would love to include a family member on our core leadership team, okay? So what the core leadership team does is we talk about PBIS initiatives in our buildings, in Media and Marple, and we talk about different ways that we can support our kids and support our families. Okay, so an example, this year so far, this school year, we started going through and completing our annual benchmarks of quality. So that is an assessment that we use each year to determine areas of need and focus for PBIS. Also this year, we, with Kim's help, we created a calendar of family events for the school year, right? So going through and saying, what are the needs and how can we support families? So if you have any interest in being a part of this team, please let us know. You can put it in the chat, or if you're watching this recorded, you can reach out to me, Angela, anyone really in your classroom team via email to let them know that you have interest in joining our team. We meet once per month, and we do meet here in person, but we could Zoom you in from wherever you are at to make it more convenient. But we would love to have a family member join our team to help us to better support your kids and other families at Easter Seals. So I love quotes. I have them kind of sporadic throughout some of my presentations. So this one is Yuri Bronfenbrenner. Every child needs one person who is crazy about them, right? If you think about yourself personally and the relationships that you've had with, whether it be your mom, your dad, a grandparent, an aunt, maybe even a teacher, right? Having a person that is crazy about you, right, does make a difference, right? And if you think about those relationships, a lot of the time those relationships are ones that are nurturing and supportive, right? You can trust the other person, you feel comfortable with them, you feel safe, right? So these are all qualities that we try to instill in relationships with your kids here at school. Right, the early childhood environment is so important, and we want to build relationships with your kids, right? So when you're a parent, that tends to be easier, right? Because I feel like you inherently love your children, right? You're there for them, you're nurturing. So sometimes this comes easier to families, but sometimes we can get a little off track. And I know myself, especially with COVID and being home for so long, the relationships between families and children can become strained too, right? So we have to think about constantly building positive relationships with our kids. And one way we do that is using the 5-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what is this 5-to-1 ratio. So the 5-to-1 ratio is actually derived from marriage research. So a marriage psychologist did research on married couples, and they determined, like, by recording conversations and interactions with these married couples, they could determine with I think it was like 85 to 90% accuracy, which couples would remain married and which couples would end in divorce based off of their ratio to positive to negative interactions. And the ratio of stable, happy couples, those marriages that would last, was 5-to-1. Fun fact, the ratio of couples that were headed for divorce was like 0.8-to-1. So there was actually more negative interactions than positive. So PBIS has adopted this 5-to-1 ratio, which says that for every one redirection or correction that a child is given, they should have 5 positive interactions, okay? And this can seem kind of daunting of a task, especially if you have a child that maybe needs a lot of redirection or correction, right? Because if you're redirecting them 5 times, right? 5 times 5, right? You're going to have to give, 5 times the amount of positive interactions. But we like to reframe it using this piggy bank analogy, okay? So think about everybody having this piggy bank, okay? And all of the positive interactions that a kid has fills their bank, right? So let's use school, for example. Kiddo comes in off the bus, off the car. Oh, hey, good morning. Nice to see you, right? That's a deposit, right? Maybe teacher holds their hand. Oh, it's so nice to see you this morning. Another deposit. Oh, I love your shirt. Is that Paw Patrol? Right? Like deposit, right? So we constantly want our staff to be filling our kiddos' banks with positive interactions, right? So that when we have to redirect or correct, and that's a withdrawal, their banks are still full. They remain full, okay? Because what happens to a kiddo if all they get all day is withdrawals, correction, don't do that, stop that, come here, do this, do it this way, right? Their bank gets empty and they get depleted, right? That's when we get that frustration, right? Maybe they're going to have a tantrum, or maybe they're going to be like burned out, right? So we really want to focus on filling our kiddos' banks. And that even goes for us families, right? At home, we want to make a conscious effort. I know for me, it's hard when I'm a working mom and I come home and there's things to do, right? Like we got to cook dinner, we got to do homework, we have to, do our bedtime routine. There's just stuff upon stuff that needs to get done. So you're giving lots of directions, a lot of corrections, right? So trying to find the time to fill your kiddos' banks at home is really important too. And for families, that's like some of the best stuff, like the snuggles and the hugs and the kisses and, just whenever you can sneak in a positive interaction, that's going to fill your kid's bank, right? So we always try to do that at school. It's something that you can work on doing at home. Also, tidbit, when I do staff training and we talk about the 5-to-1 ratio, we also talk about this as it relates to ourselves, okay? Because listen, I know being a parent, raising a young child, whether or not they have a disability is hard, okay? It's hard. There's no other way around it. So you also, right, we also have our piggy banks that need to be filled. So make sure that you're also taking care of yourself, right? Getting a good night's sleep, right? Exercising, eating well, but also doing the things that you enjoy doing, whether that be reading a book, taking a bike ride, taking a yoga class, going out for a good meal, right? Our banks need to be filled too, right? So remember that 5-to-1 ratio, and it can really be a nice strategy to use. Here are some tips, some ways to give kids encouragement. Simple things like thank you. Oh, thank you for putting your dish in the sink. Oh, what a good problem solver you are. You were able to, figure out how to get that door open when it seemed like it was jammed. It's so much fun playing with you. You are so good at that puzzle or sharing or taking turns. And bring it back to our values, right? So we do this at school a lot. Oh, that was so kind when you shared your toy with Bonnie, right? So when you're giving them positive feedback and giving encouragement, tie it to like a really specific value so they understand what it means to be kind or to be a good friend, right? This one, this we used to use a lot when we were at home during COVID. Thank you for using your inside voice when your sister was sleeping, right? It's really putting that focus on when they are engaging in appropriate positive behavior. So here are some little tips. Again, try to refill and fill your kid's piggy bank at home whenever you can. Try to use those positive comments and encouragement with your child and have fun together. I know it's hard. Again, like I said, trying to do all the things when you get home, but make that time, right? Make that time. I remember, to tell you a quick little story. When my son, he's 7 now, but when he was young, he first started daycare. He was 18 months. And my husband was working nights at the time. So I was responsible for picking him up from school. I would bring him home. It'd be just the two of us. I'd be making dinner. And he was like having tantrums. Like as soon as I brought him in the door and I would start cooking, he'd have these like tantrums. I'm like, what in the world is going on? So, you know, mom, behavior analyst. I was like, what's happening here? And I'm like, he was doing it for my attention, right? Like he just got done from school. He wanted to see his mommy, and mommy all of a sudden was in the kitchen cooking, right? So I made a point. Okay, we come home, you know, I'm going to spend some time with him first. We're going to have fun. We'll play. He liked at that time, he loved like dinosaurs and stuff. So we would play dinosaurs or a fun activity just for 5 minutes, not super long. And then I would bring him in the kitchen with me. And I would have him help cooking, meaning like banging pots and pans. But it was a way that I was filling his bag. We were having fun together and including him in our routine. We're going to talk a little bit more about play now. Play at this age is so important. That's how kids learn, right? So sometimes as a parent, it can be kind of foreign to us because we're old and not fun. I'm only speaking for myself. But following a child's lead in play can be really powerful. So here are some tips, okay? Just kind of sit back at first. Watch what your child's doing, okay? And then join in what they're doing. Talk about what it is. So instead of directing them during play, just say, oh, like, I see you have that car. It's going really fast, right? It's kind of like a labeling and putting a language to what they're doing instead of giving them directions. Encouraging their creativity, like, oh, like, I didn't think you could, you know, stack the cars like that. That's very creative, right? Watch for their cues, right? Watch for your openings of when you can, you know, jump in and engage with them during their play. And then try to avoid power struggles, okay? So like I said, try to even limit giving directions during playtime. But power struggles can be very challenging with young kids. And what we see primarily as power struggles is when, and even at school, right? If we give a direction, the child says, it's like, no, right? No, don't want to do that. Or they just refuse. Some kids, even kids, if they have limited language, they might not say no, but they're telling you no, right? By not engaging, right? So try to avoid that back and forth where it's like, well, I said do this, and they're not doing it. Do this. Like we want to try to avoid that back and forth. And we're going to talk about strategies to do that. But a big way is just like to give them a choice. Right, we're talking a lot about choices. That's one big way to avoid power struggles. So instead of saying, you know, roll the car down the ramp, right? You could say, oh, should we roll the car down the ramp or should we race the cars, right? You're still playing with cars and you're still kind of guiding what they're doing, but you're avoiding that, you know, direction where they could say no to. And then have fun. Remember, playtime should be fun and enjoyable. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to talk about expectations and roles. So research tells us that kids are less likely to engage in problem behavior or challenging behavior when they know what to do, how to do it, and what is expected of them. So I talked a little bit about this already, but we want to use positive language and tell them what to do instead. So here are some common phrases that we want to try to avoid. Right? Instead of saying no running, we want to say, here's your walking feet. Instead of stop yelling, we want to say, oh, let's use an inside voice. Instead of no hitting, we can say hands to yourself. Instead of no crying, we could say, tell me or show me what you need. And sometimes even when they're crying, you don't have to say anything, right? Maybe you can console them or wait them out a little bit or just give them a choice of activities, right? So trying to avoid the no, stops, and don'ts, trying to focus on the positive. I do want to say here, though, that teaching stop and go is an important skill. You do it at school, you should do it at home too. It's very important that your child can follow the command of stop, right? If in the case of maybe they're in a dangerous situation, right? We just don't want to use stop all the time because then it might lose some of that power, right? We want to use it when we have to, right? To keep the child safe. Okay, so definitely want to use it. We definitely want kids to understand and to be able to follow that command, but we want to, use it when it's really needed for safety. So we talked about this, telling kids what to do instead of what not to do. We want to clearly and simply state what you expect your child to be doing. Sometimes too much language in the context of giving a direction can be confusing for any young child. And then we want to make sure we're using age-appropriate expectations and language. And know what's reasonable, right? Like knowing your kid and what their abilities and limitations are is really important. Expecting too much or too little can lead to frustration. Because at school, we got to find that sweet spot, right? You want to challenge them, but not to the point where they are so upset they can't complete the task, right? And the same goes at home, right? What is an age-appropriate expectation that you can put on a child that doesn't push them over the edge, right? And try to keep your expectations realistic. So here's what I wanted to show you earlier. So this is our Delaware County behavior matrix. And what I would love to do as a follow-up to this training after I get it posted and recording, I'm going to send copies home to all of our families because this information is really helpful to have. So the expectations at the top are be safe, be kind, have fun. There are program-wide expectations. But the rules that are listed for each of those common areas are like common language that we use at school, right? So use kind words, wait your turn, use listening ears, gentle hands, stay with an adult, stay with your group, use your walking feet, right? So as your children are learning what these rules and expectations mean, they should be able to translate and generalize over for your use at home as well, right? So being able to know, oh, they know what walking feet means from school. I'm going to use that, when we're in the parking lot, when we're going shopping, or when we're, wherever that would be appropriate to use. So I will be sharing hard copies with everybody, but I just wanted you to see this. And that's what we use to create that common positive language at school. Here are some examples at home. Now, we also use a lot of visuals, okay? So some examples for rules at home might be, clean up, inside voice, maybe depending on where your child's at developmentally, ask before using that's not yours, or use words to solve problems. Again, depending on where your child's at developmentally. Or you just want to have some pictures. We follow directions, we take turns, we clean up, we ask for help, we have a calm body, we use listening ears, okay? So if you want help in creating rules for at home, visual supports for at home, please let your teams know. We can totally create these for you, but we need to make it specific to what your rules are, right? And what your routines look like at home. But utilizing visual supports with young children, regardless of developmental abilities, are just so powerful, right? It's less demanding than an adult having to say, do this all the time, right? So there are some examples, but using pictures to teach rules is awesome. It can be so simple. If you want like real life pictures, just use your camera, right? Like this picture here, I don't know who that cutie kid is, but right? Like, oh, we put our paper towels in the trash can and our trash in the trash can. Like, remember, we put our trash in the trash can, right? You can post it, print it out. You can just show them on your phone. You're going to model, right? Oh, look, I'm putting my trash in the trash can, right? You're going to practice. And then when your child engages in the role, you're going to praise them, right? With that same common language. Oh, I love how you put your trash in the trash can, right? It's just reinforcing those concepts and those roles. And it can be really simple. It doesn't have to be a challenge, but we do it all the time at school. And it's also another great strategy that you can use at home. So help your kiddo to be successful. I love these little pictures, they're so cute. So show and tell. So show them, right, with the picture, tell them what the expectation is. Practice, practice, practice. We can't expect that a child's gonna just learn a rule or expectation overnight. It takes time, and it takes multiple trials, right, or multiple opportunities for the child to practice those same rules and expectations, okay? And then, give them some reinforcement and encouragement along the way. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit now about routines, okay? So we want to establish routines at school and at home. If we can get into a rhythm of routines, it gives the child an idea of what to expect and what's coming, right? So if we can do that, they are less likely to engage in challenging behavior, which is, right, one of the ultimate goals of positive behavior supports, right? We haven't talked a lot about that yet, right? Because the goal is to predict and to prevent challenging behavior by using all of these tools, right? So we can use visuals to do that, right? So here's an example at the bottom with that good morning routine, right? So maybe they get up, maybe they go potty or get their diaper changed, maybe they have breakfast or meds, maybe they, brush their hair, brush their teeth, and they get dressed, okay? For my son, morning routine was really hard for a really long time. But it was just getting into that rhythm that was really important, of having the same steps in the routine every day, and using a visual can help. We use visuals at school for things like hand washing, for if kiddos are learning to toilet train, we have step-by-step visuals, and also just to help them know what's going on throughout their day, right? A general visual schedule is used in each classroom. Here's one for brushing teeth, right? Visual schedule is going to really help to break down the different steps in the routines to teach them, okay? Timers are also another super, super great tool to help transition from one step to the next. We use them a lot in the classrooms. So if you're thinking about a morning routine, I know my son, he needs to watch a show in the morning. And it's just, this is like a habit that he got into. But we set a timer and it's 20 minutes and then the TV's off, right? Timer goes off. Oh, now it's time to go get dressed, right? So timers can be really great tools to help cue a child that, this activity is over, something else is coming, right? And once you start being consistent with using timers, it really helps to prepare the child for, oh, this is going to be done, something else is going to happen. Choices, told you we would get there. So choices are one of the best strategies that we use at school, and one of the biggest, most helpful ones you can use at home. Because when we give a choice, a child, it helps them to feel like they have some say in what's going on, right? And don't we all want that, right? We all want that. So think about these different parts of your day, these different routines that maybe you have at home, like getting dressed. I told you my daughter's too. Getting dressed with her is still a struggle, but every morning I pick out 2 or even 3 different outfits for her, right? And say, oh, do we want to wear this outfit or that? And sometimes it's even start with pants. Do you want to wear blue pants or pink pants? Either way, just put on pants, right? And then we pick a shirt, okay? So offering a choice at each step, it can sometimes be a little challenging, but it is worth it if you can avoid the tantrum or other challenging behaviors. Even bath time. I do this with my kids. Do you want to wash your hair or your body first? Okay. Dinner. We could do a whole training on mealtime behaviors, right? But Sometimes I let my kids pick the vegetable, right? Are we going to have broccoli or green beans for dinner? Either way, we're having a vegetable, but they get to pick. We could go on and on for in each of these different scenarios. You can embed a choice. Bedtime, another routine that can be challenging. My son, he's 7. He needs to read every night. It's part of his homework. So sometimes I'll, say like, okay, do you want to read the book tonight, or do you want mommy to read a chapter? Right? Sometimes like I read a little bit, he reads a little bit. Okay. So you can find flexibility within choices. And again, if the child feels like they are a part of the routine and they have a choice, it can make those routines go by much more smoothly. Again, limited and reasonable, right? I'm not going to offer this first choice, French fries, mashed potatoes, or tater tots, because I am not a restaurant and I don't have those options. If I had them, sure. If I'm pulling out bags of frozen stuff and I'm like, French fries or tater tots, sure. But I'm not gonna, it's gonna be a convenient choice, right? For at home and what's available, what's on hand, right? Right, we talked about clothing, even the seating arrangements. Do you want to sit on the couch or in a beanbag? Do we want to play Legos or puzzles, right? And we do this all throughout the day at school, right? Whether it's tabletop activities, giving them choices of that. We're constantly giving them options of what to do, but it all falls into the routines of what we're doing. Even the circle time. Do you want to sit in the blue chair or the red chair? Either way, they're sitting for a circle, right? But we're embedding that structured choice to help them be more likely to engage in the activity. Another strategy we use a lot is first then, okay? So the principle behind the first then is that if you give a child a direction of something that maybe what we call is like lesser preferred, right? So in this example here, putting on shoes. Do some kids like putting on shoes? I think most kids don't. But if their shoes are off, right? We want the shoes back on. That's the lesser preferred. We're going to follow, the lesser preferred with a preferred activity like going outside. So this is really natural, right? Oh, you want to go outside? Okay. First we put on your shoes, then we go outside. Okay, it's natural. Sometimes they're not always as natural. They have to be more contrived, but using that same framework. Cleaning up, okay? First, we're going to clean up toys, then we can have a snack, okay? Try to follow a non-preferred activity or something they struggle with, like cleaning up with something fun, okay? Getting dressed, same thing. First, we're going to get dressed, then we're going to go outside. Or first, we're going to get dressed, then we can watch, a video on the iPad, okay? So try to follow the things that are challenging with things that are fun. Okay, they're going to be more likely to engage in the non-preferred or lesser preferred activity, knowing what's coming next. We do have some visual first then boards that we use at school. So we can put like a picture in each of the columns. If this is something that you want for home, again, we can totally share with you. So in this situation, a child maybe loves the ball bounce, but doesn't really love doing numbers. So we say, okay, first we're going to play numbers, then we can play with the ball bounce. All right, so we are going to move on to just a little bit of positive reinforcement. We want to catch the kids being good, right? We want to give specific positive attention for kids for behaviors that we want to see. We want to be focusing more of our attention on that than on the negative or challenging behaviors. So this little cutie pie in the picture, we can say, oh, you are being so careful keeping this on the table. Wonderful job. Okay. Just calling out the things that they're doing. Even like, let's say you're at home and you're cooking dinner and you can see, your kids in the other room. Oh, I love how you guys are playing so nicely together. It makes mommy or daddy very happy. Right? Just calling it out. You don't have to be like right next to them, but just, letting them know when what they're doing is the right thing. I love this picture. So again, I originally did this training last year because everything is harder now. Everything is harder. So cut yourself some slack. If a lot of what you heard today is new to you, I don't want you to leave here feeling overwhelmed. You can't do it all. Okay. And that's why we're here, right? We're doing a lot at school and we're using these strategies throughout the day. But we also want to give you some tips to make your time at home easier too. Okay. So if you can, pick one thing, okay, pick one thing and work on it, that's okay. I also wanted to share this slide with you. It's an important, sorry, I didn't know if someone wanted to say something. It's important when a child pushes our buttons, okay, I'm talking about our own children, okay, that we try our best to stay calm. And I know that it is a challenge, right? So how do we do this? Here are some helpful tips for if a child is pushing your buttons. Try to take some deep breaths. Repeat a positive affirmation. I have patience. I can do this. Even if I love my child, right? Label your child's feelings. This is a social emotional piece that we do at school. We didn't really talk too much about it today, but I say to my kids all the time, like, I see you're mad. I see you're upset, right? You could even say, mommy loves you. It's not going to change the expectation, right? If they're upset because you asked them to clean up and they're just having a hard time, you can say like, oh, I see you're upset, but mommy loves you and it's still time to clean up, but I can help, right? Like, you can use the strategies and keep the expectation, okay? And then think about, a little reflection. If this happens again, what could I do, right? Maybe next time I'm going to set a timer, right? We do this all the time at school. If something doesn't go great, what can we do differently tomorrow? Cut yourself some slack. Tomorrow I'm going to use a timer before I tell the kid to clean up, right? And we'll see if that helps. Think about, was the behavior communicating something? It's probably communicating they weren't finished, right? Could you have given them 2 extra minutes of playtime? Right? Think about your child's feelings as well as your own. I love this one. Remember something about your child that you love, right? We love our kids dearly, but they push our buttons, right? It's important to think about the positive, right? And then we can count to 10. So I just wanted to share that with you because, raising kids is not easy stuff. This is hard stuff, especially, during the past couple of years. So cut yourself a break. Like I said, one thing at a time. I'll also share, we'll send it all, email to all of our families with some resources. There are some links here. If you want to do anything from home for first then boards, visual schedules, I will share all of this with you guys after I post the recording. I'm just going to stop recording now. Oh.